John had always thought space was empty. Endless stars stretched in every direction, silent and cold, and even the advanced ships he traveled in felt lonely. He had flown past countless planets, seen beautiful nebulas, but never felt a true connection anywhere. That was until he landed on Varelia, a world so unlike anything he had imagined. Its forests floated in the air like green clouds, and rivers glowed with a soft blue light, winding across valleys in impossible patterns. The sky was painted with two suns that bathed everything in gold and silver. Even standing still, John felt a strange sense of life vibrating through the ground. His mission was simple: observe the native beings, the Varelians. They were described in reports as tall, graceful, and ethereal. Their skin shimmered under the light, sometimes clear, sometimes reflecting colors like liquid crystal. Their eyes were silver, almost glowing, filled with emotions humans couldn't always understand. John had expected to be cautious, to observe from a distance, but when he saw her, he forgot about everything else. She was sitting alone near a glowing river, her legs crossed, hands resting lightly on her knees. Her hair was long and luminous, falling over her shoulders like threads of liquid starlight. She hummed softly, a sound that blended perfectly with the gentle flow of the water. John hesitated, afraid to disturb her, but something pulled him closer. "Hello," he said softly, trying to keep his voice calm. At the sound, she froze. Her silver eyes widened and her small body shook slightly, almost like she was trembling. John's heart jumped. Did he say something wrong? Was he too loud? The trembling made him step back instinctively, his palms sweaty. I didn't mean to scare you," he said, his voice gentle. The Varelian blinked slowly, and then, surprisingly, she gave a tiny nod. I am Lyra," she whispered. Her voice was delicate, musical, and it carried a strange power that made John feel like he had just stepped into a dream. He smiled awkwardly. "I'm John. I just arrived on your world. I mean no harm." Lyra's trembling didn't stop immediately, but she relaxed just a little. She tilted her head, studying him. John felt exposed under her gaze, as if she could see every thought and fear in his mind. He had studied alien cultures, read countless reports, but nothing prepared him for this. The feeling that he was being understood before he even spoke. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The glowing river flowed between them, reflecting the two suns, and the air smelled of flowers and fresh water. John realized he wanted to say more, to connect, but words felt fragile, not enough to cross the distance between human and Varelian. Finally, he tried again. "Your world. It's beautiful. I've never seen anything like it." Lyra's eyes flickered with light, and she took a small step closer. Her hands moved to her chest almost instinctively, and John noticed her tremble again. It wasn't fear, exactly. It was something deeper, more vulnerable, like her body was reacting to the truth in his words. John swallowed hard. He had expected to observe, to record, to keep a professional distance. But now, seeing her like this, he felt an unfamiliar warmth in his chest, a desire to protect her, to connect. He realized he didn't just want to learn about Varelia, he wanted to know her. Lyra finally spoke again, her voice barely audible over the soft river hum. You are not like the others," she said. John shook his head, confused but intrigued. "What do you mean?" She gave no answer, only a faint smile, almost shy, almost secretive. The trembling continued, small and irregular, and John knew instinctively that it wasn't something he could fix with words. It was something deeper. Something about trust, about fear, and about the courage it took to let another being see you fully. John took a slow breath, letting the silence hang between them. He realized then that meeting Lyra wasn't just another mission. It was the beginning of something unexpected, something that could change not only his life, but the way humans were seen on this distant, magical world. And in that moment, as the twin suns reflected off her shimmering hair and her trembling frame, John knew he had to be patient. He had to earn her trust, one small step at a time. Days passed, and John found himself drawn to Lyra more than he had ever expected. Every morning he would wake to the soft glow of Aurelia's rivers and wonder if she would be near them, humming her gentle tunes. She seemed distant sometimes, cautious, yet there was a spark in her eyes whenever she noticed him. John couldn't stop watching her, not just because she was beautiful, but because she carried a quiet strength that humans rarely saw. One evening, the twin moons rose high above the floating forests, painting everything in silver and blue. The air was cool but not cold. Lyra sat by the river again, her long hair catching the moonlight and shimmering like liquid starlight. She seemed lost in thought, staring at her reflection in the glowing water. John approached slowly, unsure if he should disturb her, but something inside urged him forward. You shine even brighter than the moons," he said softly, not thinking much, just letting the words escape. The moment he spoke, Lyra froze. Her hands went to her chest and her entire body trembled. She looked at him with wide silver eyes, glistening as if she might cry. John's heart skipped a beat. He had meant it as a simple compliment, innocent and sincere, yet it had shaken her in a way he could not understand. I didn't mean to startle you," he said quickly, stepping back. "I just wanted to tell the truth. You are amazing." Lyra shook her head slightly, still trembling, and her lips quivered as if she wanted to speak but could not. Finally she whispered, her voice almost inaudible. I've never heard words like that before." John's chest tightened. He realized then that Varelians expressed affection differently. A compliment wasn't casual, it was intimate, a vulnerable act. And her trembling wasn't fear of him. It was fear of being seen, of letting someone reach her heart. He crouched slightly, trying to make himself smaller, less intimidating. "I don't want to scare you," he said. "I just wanted you to know that I see you. Truly see you." For a long moment Lyra said nothing. Her trembling slowed slightly, but her eyes remained wide, reflecting both the twin moons above and the deep emotions swirling inside her. John realized that this simple exchange had bridged a gap between them. A gap filled with fear, trust, and the unspoken longing to connect. I'm not used to this," Lyra admitted finally. Her voice was soft, fragile, yet determined. "Humans, they do not usually speak like this. They do not see us, like you see me." John swallowed, his throat tight. "Then I'll do my best to see you always. Not just your beauty, but who you are, what you feel, what you care about." Lyra's lips curved slightly into a faint, shy smile, though her trembling had not entirely stopped. John could feel her tension slowly easing, as if his words were a small bridge across the distance her fear had built. For the first time he understood that trust wasn't given lightly. It had to be earned step by step, word by word. The night grew quieter. The glowing river rippled softly, reflecting their faces in the still water. John wanted to say more, to reach out and hold her hand, but he resisted. He had to be patient. Lyra's trembling was a sign of vulnerability, not weakness, and he would honor it. Finally, she looked at him fully, meeting his gaze with silver eyes that shimmered with both fear and hope. "Thank you," she whispered, "for noticing me." John smiled gently. He had never felt anything like this before. On a world so far from Earth and a being so unlike any human, he had found something precious, a spark of connection, fragile but real. And as the twin moons reflected on the river and on Lyra's shimmering hair, John knew that this moment was the beginning of something extraordinary, something neither human nor Varelian could have predicted, but something that would change both of their lives forever. After that night by the river, John could not stop thinking about Lyra. Her trembling, her silver eyes wide with emotion, haunted him in the best way. He wanted to understand her, to learn why a simple compliment could affect her so deeply. Humans expressed emotions casually, but Lyra's reactions were different, intense, fragile, and beautiful. He realized that to connect with her, he had to understand not only her words but the emotions behind them. The next day, John spent hours observing Varelian behavior. He watched how they moved, how they interacted, how even a glance could communicate more than a sentence. He learned that a compliment for a Virelian was not just a polite word. It was a declaration, a deep and rare gift of trust. When a Virelian reacted, trembling, it was not fear of the person. It was fear of showing vulnerability, of exposing a piece of their soul. With this understanding, John approached Lyra carefully that evening. She was sitting on the same rock by the river, her hair glowing faintly in the twilight. When she noticed him, her body stiffened, but she did not run. That small act of staying, even trembling, was progress. "I've been thinking about you," John said softly, "about how humans and Virelians see the world differently. I want to understand you. I want to understand why my words make you tremble." Lyra's hands went to her chest again, her trembling returning, but she did not look away. Instead, she spoke, voice barely above a whisper. "Humans, they do not always see what is inside. They notice beauty, or strength, but not the soul. When you speak, your words, they reach me. They touch something inside that is usually hidden." John nodded slowly. He understood now. Her trembling was not weakness. It was trust being formed slowly with every word he said. He realized that connection required patience, care, and respect for boundaries. He was not just observing an alien species anymore. He was learning to communicate with a heart so different from his own, yet similar in its need to be seen and cherished. "I don't want to frighten you," John said gently. "I will take things slowly. You don't have to show me everything at once, just let me see you a little at a time." Lyra's lips trembled slightly and a faint smile appeared. "You are patient," she said. "That is rare. Most humans, they are loud, fast, careless. You notice and you wait. That is why I tremble. I am not used to someone like you." John's heart ached with a mixture of tenderness and awe. He had never met someone who could make him feel so protective and yet so humbled. Her trembling was a mirror of her courage, the courage to trust, to show a fragment of herself, to accept a connection she had feared for so long. They sat together in silence, the glowing river casting soft lights on their faces. John felt the rhythm of her breathing, the small shivers running through her frame. He realized then that love, respect, and understanding were not just human concepts. They were universal. "I will not rush you," he whispered. "And I will not leave. You can tremble if you need to. You can be afraid. I will stay with you. Always." Lyra's eyes shimmered, brighter now, reflecting both the twin moons and the hope growing inside her. She leaned slightly toward him, trembling not with fear but with the possibility of trust. John reached out gently, letting his hand hover near hers, a silent promise of protection and patience. For the first time, John understood the beauty of vulnerability, the way trembling could signal courage, how trust could be fragile and powerful at the same time. Lyra was teaching him a lesson he had never learned in human life, that to be truly close to someone, you had to see their fears, embrace their fragility, and wait for them to share their soul willingly. As the night deepened over Virelia, John felt an unspoken bond forming. He could not explain it fully, but he knew one thing. Lyra had begun to trust him, and that trust, fragile, trembling, beautiful, was worth everything. Days turned into weeks, and John and Lyra began to spend more time together. The floating forests of Virelia became their secret world. Every morning, John would find her sitting by a glowing river or beneath a tree that floated above the ground. She would hum softly and he would watch, feeling a warmth in his chest he could not explain. Lyra was cautious, still trembling occasionally, but she no longer ran when John approached. Instead, she would glance at him with her silver eyes, observing him as if trying to decide whether he could be trusted. John understood that this was part of her nature. Every action, every word carried weight. But he was patient. He spoke softly, moved slowly, and allowed her to take the first steps in their growing connection. One afternoon, The twin moons were low in the sky, casting long silver shadows across the river. John had brought a small human book with him, a collection of stories about Earth. He sat beside Lyra and opened it. "Do you want to hear a story?" he asked. Lyra tilted her head, her hair shimmering in the soft light. She nodded slowly. John began reading aloud. The words were simple, but to him they carried meaning, emotion, and life. Lyra listened intently, trembling slightly whenever she laughed or reacted to the story. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but John noticed. Her trembling was no longer fear. It was emotion, a mirror of the feelings the story evoked. When he finished the tale, Lyra looked at him with a faint, shy smile. "Your world, it feels alive," she whispered. "Even from your words I can see the beauty, the sadness, the joy," John smiled back. "And your world is alive in ways I could never imagine. The floating forest, the rivers, you live in magic every day." Lyra's lips trembled as she laughed softly. She had begun to trust him enough to show her emotions without fear. Her trembling was no longer a shield, but a sign of connection, a gentle opening of her heart. Over the next few days, John and Lyra shared more stories, more laughter, and even silence. Sometimes they would sit together by the river for hours without speaking. John learned to read her subtle movements, how her hands rested, how her breathing changed, how a faint tremble could signal a thought or emotion she had not yet expressed. One evening, a sudden rain began to fall. The glowing rivers reflected the drops like diamonds. John instinctively stepped closer and held his jacket over Lyra to shield her. She looked up at him, silver eyes wide, trembling but not with fear. This trembling was something different. Trust. She let him stay close, allowed his presence to comfort her, and in that small act, John felt their bond deepen beyond words. "You are kind?" Lyra said quietly, her voice barely above the rain. I did not expect a human to care like this." John shook his head, smiling softly. "I care because you matter. Not just to me, but you matter to me in a way I cannot explain." Lyra's trembling slowed, but her eyes shone brighter than ever. It was as if the twin moons themselves had poured their light into her. John realized then that connection was not about grand gestures. It was about patience, understanding, and the willingness to be present even when the world felt strange or overwhelming. That night they stayed by the river long after the rain stopped. The glowing waters reflected their images, and for the first time, John felt that he was truly seen. Not just by Lyra, but by a world that had seemed distant and impossible. Lyra's trembling had transformed from fear to trust, from fragility to strength. And as they watched the twin moons rise again, John knew that this connection, so fragile, so delicate, yet so powerful, was the beginning of something extraordinary. Something neither human nor Varelian could have imagined. Yet it existed between them, real and unbreakable. For weeks, John and Lyra's bond had grown stronger, yet the world around them was not always kind. The Varelians were cautious, protective of their people and their culture. Other Varelians noticed Lyra spending so much time with a human and whispered warnings. "He is different. He is dangerous. He cannot understand you," they said behind her back. At first, Lyra tried to ignore them. She trusted John, and that was all that mattered. But one afternoon, a small group of Varelians approached them by the glowing river. Their eyes were sharp, voices cold. "Lyra," one said firmly, "you must stop this. You cannot spend so much time with a human. He is unpredictable. He is not one of us." Lyra's body trembled, her hands shaking slightly as she faced them. John stepped forward instinctively, shielding her with his presence. "I am not here to harm her," he said, his voice steady but firm. "I am her friend. That is all." One of the Varelians sneered. "Friend, you think that matters? Your species is reckless, careless. You do not understand our ways, our hearts. Leave her." Lyra's trembling intensified, but she took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. Her silver eyes locked with John's. She could feel the protective warmth radiating from him. For the first time she realized that trembling was not weakness, it could be courage. It took courage to stand and speak when fear tried to hold you back. "I choose him," Lyra said, her voice quivering but strong. Her hands shook slightly, but she did not step back. She faced the group, her small form trembling under their gaze, yet unyielding. "I choose John. He has seen me, not just my skin, not just my shape, but who I am. He respects me. I trust him." The Varelians hesitated. Whispered words turned into silence. They studied Lyra's determined eyes, and for the first time John noticed a shift in her demeanor. She was no longer trembling out of fear, but out of courage. The courage to make her choice, to stand up for what she felt in her heart. John reached out, letting his hand hover near hers, ready to offer comfort. "I will not leave you," he said softly. "You do not have to face this alone." Lyra's eyes shimmered, reflecting the glowing river, the floating forests, and the twin moons above. She let her hand brush against his, small and hesitant, yet full of trust. That touch was a promise that even in the face of opposition she could rely on him. The Varelians slowly backed away, murmuring among themselves. They did not approve fully, but they could not deny Lyra's choice. She had faced them, trembling and yet unbroken. John realized then that her trembling was a language of its own, a language of honesty, of fear, of courage, and of trust. After the group left, Lyra leaned against John, slightly, still trembling, but differently now. It was not from fear, it was from relief, from the realization that she had stood up for herself and for the bond she had chosen to nurture. John hugged her gently, careful not to startle her. "You were incredible," he whispered. "Your courage. It's amazing." Lyra looked up at him, her silver eyes glistening. I am still learning," she admitted, her lips trembling into a small, shy smile. "But with you, I feel braver." John held her hand firmly. "You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be you. That is enough." For the first time, Lyra's trembling felt like strength, not weakness. She realized that trust and courage could exist together, and that standing by someone you care about could make you stronger than fear itself. That night, as the twin moons shone over the glowing rivers and floating forests, John and Lyra sat together in quiet peace. The conflict had tested them, but it had also shown them what mattered most: trust, connection, and the courage to be vulnerable in front of someone who truly cares. The night after the confrontation, John and Lyra found themselves alone on the highest cliff overlooking the glowing forests. The twin moons reflected in the rivers below, painting everything in soft silver light. A gentle breeze rustled Lyra's shimmering hair, and John could see her trembling, not with fear but with unspoken emotions. For a long moment, neither spoke. The air was filled with a quiet tension, a mixture of anticipation and vulnerability. Finally, Lyra broke the silence, her voice soft and hesitant. "John, when you complimented me that night by the river, I felt something I have never felt before." John's heart tightened. "What did you feel?" he asked gently, careful not to push too hard. Lyra's hands went to her chest, trembling slightly. It was like my soul was bare," she admitted. "I felt exposed. I did not know if I could trust anyone with it. Humans, they are not usually gentle with what they do not understand. But you saw me. Not just the surface, not just what you wanted to see, but me, truly me." John felt a lump in his throat. He had never thought his simple words could reach someone so deeply. "Lyra, I didn't know it meant so much to you," he whispered. "I just wanted to tell the truth. I wanted you to know. I see you, all of you." She took a deep breath, trembling less now, though her silver eyes glistened with emotion. "You made me realize that trust is not weakness, that allowing someone to see your heart, it is courage. I have always hidden my feelings, my fears, my soul, but with you, I feel safe enough to let them show." John reached out, his hand hovering near hers, not touching yet, respecting her space. "You don't have to hide anymore," he said softly. "I will not leave. I will not betray your trust. I will be here. Always. Lyra's trembling slowed even further, and she finally let her hand brush against his. The contact was gentle, almost tentative, yet it spoke volumes. Her small gesture was a confession, a willingness to open herself, and John felt the weight and beauty of her trust. I was afraid, she admitted quietly, her voice catching slightly, afraid of being vulnerable, afraid of being hurt. But in your patience, your kindness, it gave me hope. Hope that someone could care without taking advantage, that someone could see the truth of who I am, and still stay. John smiled, his own eyes misting slightly. Lyra, you don't have to be afraid anymore. I don't just see your light, I see your fears, your courage, and your heart. And I want to be here with all of it, with all of you. Her lips trembled, curving into a small, shy smile. I think I am starting to understand something. That feelings can be shared, and that sharing them can make you stronger, not weaker. The twin moons reflected on the glowing rivers below, and John could see Lyra's eyes shining with a mixture of vulnerability and hope. The trembling that had once marked her fear now seemed like a symbol of something far more profound. Trust, courage, and the fragile beauty of connection. He slowly took her hand in his, careful not to startle her. I promise. I will not break that trust. I will stand by you through fear, through joy, through anything. Lyra looked up at him, silver eyes glistening, trembling no longer a sign of fear but of hope, of possibility. And I want to stand with you too, she said softly. To share my world, my heart, everything. For the first time, John felt that distance between human and Varelian vanish. They were no longer two beings from different worlds, unsure of each other. They were two hearts, fragile yet brave, beginning to beat together in understanding and trust. That night, as the twin moons shone over the glowing forests, the bond between them deepened beyond words. The trembling that had marked their early encounters transformed into a symbol of courage and trust, a reminder that vulnerability could be beautiful, and that love across worlds was possible. The days that followed were quiet yet full of meaning. John and Lyra spent their time exploring Varelia together, walking through the floating forests, following glowing rivers, and sharing stories under the twin moons. Every moment was simple yet profound. The world seemed to hold its breath when they were together, as if even Varelia itself recognized the bond forming between a human and a Varelian. Lyra still trembled sometimes, especially when emotions ran deep. But John had learned to read those small shakes as signs of courage and trust, not fear. He never teased her, never pushed her, only offered patience, protection, and a gentle understanding. Slowly, the trembling became less frequent and more like a rhythm of her emotions, a language of her heart that he was beginning to understand. One evening, they sat together on a cliff overlooking the glowing forests, just as they had on the night of Lyra's revelation. The air was soft and warm, carrying the scent of alien flowers and fresh rain. Lyra leaned slightly against John, her head resting near his shoulder, and for the first time, she allowed herself to relax completely. John, she whispered, her voice soft, trembling not from fear but from emotion. I never imagined someone like you could exist. Someone who would see me, all of me, and still care. John smiled, brushing a strand of shimmering hair from her face. Lyra, I don't just care. I see you. Every part of you. Your heart, your courage, your fears. They are all part of you, and I would not change a single piece. Lyra's silver eyes glistened in the moonlight. She took a deep breath, letting the trembling flow through her. Not as weakness, but as truth. I was afraid of being vulnerable, of letting someone in. But with you, I feel alive. I feel brave. I feel loved. John's heart swelled. He took her hands gently in his, feeling the slight tremble under his fingers. Lyra, you are incredible. Stronger than you know. And together we can face anything. Your world, my world. It doesn't matter. We can build something new, something extraordinary. Lyra tilted her head, meeting his gaze fully. For the first time she trembled with joy. I want that. I want us together. The twin moons reflected on the glowing rivers and forests below, casting silver and blue light across their faces. John realized that humanity's true strength was not in weapons, not in machines, but in the ability to love, to empathize, to connect across worlds and differences. That connection, the willingness to see another being fully, to respect their fears and trust them with your own heart, was the essence of what made humans extraordinary. He pulled her gently closer, careful not to startle her, and whispered, "Then we will be together. Lyra, across worlds, across fears, across everything. I will never leave your side." Lyra trembled once more, a small shiver that spoke of courage, trust, and hope. She leaned her forehead against his, letting him feel the beating of her heart. I trust you," she whispered. "Completely." John held her tightly, letting the warmth of their connection flow between them. In that moment, under twin moons and glowing forests, the human and the Virelian became more than two beings from different worlds. They became proof that love, empathy, and courage could bridge any distance. The night deepened, and the forest hummed softly with life. The rivers sparkled like stars fallen to the ground. John and Lyra sat there together, trembling and laughing, speaking and listening, sharing their souls in silence and words. And in that moment, humanity's light shone brightest, not through strength or conquest, but through the courage to love, to understand, and to connect. Lyra had trembled at his first compliment, but now, trembling became a language of trust, hope, and a future built together. As the twin moons bathed them in silver light, John whispered one last time, "You shine brighter than any star I've ever seen. Lyra." Lyra smiled, trembling softly in a way that was no longer fear, but joy, hope, and love. Together they looked out over the glowing forests of Virelia, knowing that across galaxies hearts could meet, trust could grow, and humanity, through empathy and courage, had proven itself extraordinary once more.